Nation. Welcome into another episode of the Renegade Rundown. Yours truly, Georgitis, aka Renegade Report One. You can find me on X. It's just the Renegade Report right here on YouTube, as well as Facebook and Instagram and things like that. I've got my co-host with me, Deshaun Adams, aka at Deshaun Adams 18. You can find him on X as well, where we like to talk crap and talk a big game and really have fun. Communicating with all of you guys and the people in the media and everything else. There's a bit of an auspicious, missing person here. Jen is usually to my left, and she is not with us today. Unfortunately, she's probably not going to make it in. She had a family emergency, so thoughts and prayers from me to Sean. We could use thoughts and prayers from the entire audience. Jen's mom took a bit of a tumble this afternoon, so she's asking for your thoughts and prayers. And we hope that she can have the quickest recovery possible. So we love you, Jen, and we're thinking about you. If you're able to watch this, to kind of get your mind out of everything for a minute there as you help the family and everything like that. On a brighter note, it's hard to move away from something like that to a brighter note, but we're going to talk FSU football heavy today. The pads have returned. Florida State with, I believe it was their third practice today,
Yes.
if I'm not mistaken. I thought it was going to be full pads. It was actually more of shells, pretty much everything but the thigh pads and the cups and the pants. That was pretty much the only thing missing. They have their helmet, their shoulder pads, rib protectors, all that good stuff. So you got to see some thumping, not going to the ground, but there was some thumping going on in the trenches, and Josh Farmer and Daryl Jackson, guys like that, able to show a little bit of what they've grown in the off season there. So that's great. We had a surprise commitment, not a big surprise if you watch this program. We've talked to you about it a ton. If you were going to get a surprise, this is one that was very likely. When you looked at the offer list that Malik Clark had, Florida State was, they were the big dig in the room on that one, for lack of a better term. Going up against South Carolina and some of those other people on that list, Florida State goes for it, and they get a young guy, the third blue chip receiver. The other two are top 100 consensus guys according to the 247 composite. So just a great wide receiver class, one of the best wide receiver classes in memory. You have to go way, way back to maybe when Rashard Green and them guys came in to find a better class at Florida State. So just absolutely on fire there. The house settlement came through today, so all kind of news there with the new 105 player scholarship rule. It's a hard cap. So basically, for Florida State, who carries about 105 players, including walk-ons, everybody will be eligible for scholarship. So we're going to see how that goes. I'm not sure if I'm missing anything there, but I've ran my mouth enough there. Deshaun, how are we doing this Friday?
Oh man.
Anything else caught your eye, or did I cover the headlines pretty good?
No, you caught all the headlines, man. First of all, I'm doing pretty good today, man. It's just been a little, laid back kind of day. Typical Southern heat with thunderstorms. But it's been good, man. Just like you catching up on some film of the practice, film of the practice, and looking at things and just seeing the guys starting to prepare, going through technique and drills and things. So really enthusiastic and ready to see. Uh, let's get ready to get to it. 29 days, 23 practices, I believe, left. So let's
Man,
roll.
fired up. I didn't, I forget when fall camp gets here how close the practices are together. I guess because of how strung out the 15 spring practices are. But
Hmm.
when Norvell came out and said, 24 practices, I'm sitting here, we're 30 days away from the game. That's not many off days. So yeah, it'll be something like Mondays or Tuesdays they'll have off. Besides
Hmm.
that, they don't have 2 days anymore. I think that's kind of part of it. I think maybe when 2 days was around, maybe you had 2 days off a week. Maybe James could school me on that. I'm just gonna shut up.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. But yeah, pretty much every day it'll feel like from now until kickoff, we're gonna have a practice report. Mike
Hmm.
Norvell came out. We were planning on breaking down what Mike Norvell had to say after practice, like I did the other day on the Voice of College Football. He
Hmm.
was a little bit more vocal after the first practice than he was after this one. He literally only had a 2 minute conversation there, but Odell Haggins came out to speak. We got to hear from Malik Benson. We
Hmm.
got to hear from Daryl Jackson. Uh, Kyle Morlock with this crazy catch that they, really cut
Mhm,
up. The FSU media team did a good job of putting out there on social media. Brock
mhm,
Glenn has kind of stolen the show the first couple practices.
mhm.
Um, but before we get too crazy into that, Malik Clark, again, the surprise commitment. I'm going to bring it up here. The wide receiver, 4-star out of Rockledge, South Carolina. And we're going to check him out before we get into the practice stuff. But what do you think? What was your first impressions when you get the surprise commit from the young man out of South Carolina?
Two things. First and foremost, lead speed for his size. Good hips. I was very surprised. It's not that I was doubting a commitment, but it was like one of those situations like it came out of nowhere where we knew it was a date, but to expect, I looked at it more possibly South Carolina. Um, but I will be honest, and I will say this, and it's a word that a phrase that I say: Rock Hill, South Carolina, has been good. If you know the players that's come out of there, it's been good to Florida State over the last 3 to 4 decades. I mean, everyone from Jamie Robinson from the mid 2000s, not the one from the past 4 years. Um, Chris Hope, D Feaster. I mean, it's been a collection of good players, solid players that's come out of that area and out of that particular high school. Chris, that's the same high school that Chris Hope went to, I believe. Um, that just been good to Florida State. But on Malik Clark, elite level speed with size. That's the first thing I say with him. He can get separation, much like CJ Wiley, a little bit faster. I mean, he's clocked at a 4.3. He runs in the tens in the track. I think it's like 10.8 or something like that. Uh, that's the first thing I see with him. Really good hips, catch radius, and elite speed for his size. Legit 6'3.5", 6'4" receiver.
Yeah, he's kind of fit the mold of what they brought in this year, and
Hmm.
it makes sense. It's what they need. We're going to lose a lot of guys. We've lost a lot of guys the last couple of years,
Yeah.
but between what we brought in the 2024 class and what they've got coming in this year, you think
Hmm.
about Jalen Brown comes over from LSU. Between the 24 and the 25 class, you're going to have four top 100. Why? I can't talk. Four top 100 receivers infused into your program in a 2-year span. So yeah, it's going to be a whole lot of fun competition. You talk about guys like Elijah Moore stepping up as they get to school first year, but I couldn't agree more. You brought up the speed, but
Hmm.
6'2", 2.5, six
Hmm.
three.
Hmm.
Getting up there close to 200 pounds. It's a beautiful thing. Again, it was a surprise.
Hmm.
It wasn't the craziest surprise.
No.
It's just I'm guilty. We talked about that commitment date. He has
Hmm.
advertised that thing like crazy, July 25th, July 25th. I can't lie and say I was sitting there waiting on it. Uh, I had a graphic ready, but
Hmm.
completely caught me by surprise. I found out by uh, a Twitter announcement or a Twitter notification because yeah, it was. It just kind of with
Hmm.
everything going on, it kind of got lost in the shuffle. Do you
Yeah.
have a comparison maybe for Malik, for a prospect with him coming out?
Ooh. I don't have one, but one was thrown out, and it was thrown out in a space, and it was from someone outside the program that well, I guess was outside of following Florida State that was a little more familiar with the area. They said this is a guy that could be a T. Higgins type. That was the
Okay.
name that was thrown out. T. Higgins was a name. So
The
I
pretty
mean,
much
just
the kind of receiver we need that we haven't
yeah,
gotten over the past 10 years.
yeah. Um, you can see that they also are targeting bigger wide receivers this year. We did bring in a haul last year with four, but I believe Moore was the only one above 6 foot, or at least above 6'1" or 6 foot. Moore's like 6'4", and everyone else is at least 6 foot or smaller. But this year we're targeting bigger receivers. With he and Wiley give you at least 6'2", 6'3".
I didn't realize it was that extreme,
Mm-hmm.
but definitely, I mean, you've got the one guy in Dalen, uh, um,
McCutcheon.
but yeah, Dalen McCutcheon. I'm
Mm-hmm.
always forgetting his last name. Yeah, he's a shorter guy, 5'11", 6 foot, who reminds a lot of people of Rashad Green. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the other wide receiver is what 6'4", 200 pounds of
Mm-hmm.
maybe that Keon Coleman type to come in. So it really is a beautiful mix. But yeah, size.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the days of 2021 where every single receiver is like 6'1", 6', 6'1", 6 foot.
Mhm.
Except for a guy like Kentron Portier, who was really, really young back then, uh,
Mhm.
who was another one who made a good play at practice, I've heard,
Mhm.
here in the last couple of days. But yeah, totally agree, man. Malik Clark has a chance to come in here and be an absolute beast. He's not quite as highly touted as the other two, as Daylon and CJ, but
Mhm.
still a big time player. And
Mhm.
something that I've talked about that was big in Jimbo Fisher's time, he would go out of state for guys, but if he went out of state, it was going to be a top three, top five at worst player at their position. I've talked about that throughout this
Mhm.
whole class, and you've seen it. Florida has like 7 guys committed out of the state of Florida. They've
Mhm.
got several out of Georgia, and they'll go pretty deep in Georgia because, as we've talked about, I truly believe they're the second most talented state.
Mhm.
Pretty much that whole top 50 is really, really good over there. But outside of that, if they're not from Florida or Georgia, if they're going into South Carolina, or they're going into Mississippi or
Mhm.
Alabama, or whatever the case may be, those
Mhm.
players are going to be top 5 at their position. And they do it again with this kid who's, depending on which one you look at, some have him number 2, some have him number 3. I think
Mhm.
the worst I saw, somebody had him number 4 or number 5.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like I said, that particular area in itself is always been good. And it's a underrated area. It's also Jadeveon Clowney. There's some other names you can throw out there that's come out of that area, but in particular when it pertains to Florida State, a lot of some good DBs have come out of there that we've gotten, and good players. All been starters, at least special teams or starters on defense for us over the last decades under Bobby in particularly.
You got to imagine that Shane Beamer is
Yeah.
furious about this
Hmm.
one. South Carolina fans, like I said, they were ranting pretty good.
Yeah.
Woo! It's got to feel pretty tough to lose a guy out of your backyard like this, who's kind of a fringe 4-star, like who we could forget. And not to crap on him or nothing. I'm pumped that we got this guy. It's just the
Hmm.
fact that he had so many crystal balls. He's in South Carolina. All those things, you kind of lose track. That we could lose track of him, but for them, this is a major get. This is a guy they have to keep in state. This is a dude, that is, they got to build their program around guys like this,
Hmm.
guys that maybe are a little bit underrated and not in the top 50 or the top 100. So to lose the number 2 kid in the state to Florida State like that, for their third wide receiver, it's got to be tough for those guys. And I hate it for them, but I love it for us. It's really been a beautiful thing to watch. Mike Norvell's, what's up, man?
Oh, none. I was listening to you, but Gary, I want to speak to one of our commenters in the chat, Gary West. Yes, Fentrell Cypress is also from the area, so that's another guy. Like I said, that area has been very good.
Yeah, I
Thanks
didn't
for
realize it.
reminding me, Gary.
Did not realize that at all.
Yeah.
Finchell Cypress, as we kind of move on into the next thing, yeah,
Hmm.
another guy who's been a beast at practice, has been a
Hmm.
freak, has been an absolute freak. But yeah, they keep on doing their thing with recruiting. People were worried about it, uh, even as recently as like 3 weeks ago. We were on here having to do shows and be like, "All right, guys, we promise everything's going to be all right. Take a deep breath.
But
The last week of
relax.
June, the first couple weeks of July, we're going to get 8, 9, 10, even more commits. And that latest commit brings us up to our 13th commit with
Hmm.
Malik Clark. According to 247, that's 12 out of our 13 commitments. Our blue chips, it's 11 out of the 13 on three, but that's just because they downgraded 2 kids. At
Hmm.
one point, it would have been 100% on three. We move all the way up to number 7 in the on three rankings. Miami drops down to number 10. I believe Clemson might be one spot ahead of us or one spot behind us, something like that. But with
Hmm.
one 5-star and 10 4-stars, according to On Three, 2 3-stars, Florida State jumps into the 7th position. We're only number 17, according to 247 in their composite. But
Hmm.
when you look at the breakdown, we have one 5-star, 11 4-stars, one 3-star. And when you look at like 10, the whole 10 people ahead of us, the majority of them don't have a 5-star.
Hmm.
And they either have less 4-stars than us, like considerably less, or they have about the same number and 5, 6, 7 3-stars. The
Yes.
thing, and not to talk a bunch of crap about 247, this used to really make a ton of sense when it was all about high school recruiting and almost everybody was hitting that cap. Uh,
Hmm.
Once you hit 18 recruits, unless it's a 5-star, it doesn't bump your score at all. But up until that 18, even 3 stars really give you they may give you 8, 9, 10 points. All the way up until you get to it's around 18 to 20 points. They have a really complicated formula, not points, 20, 18 or 20 players. So that's just why Florida State's 17, because they only have 13 commits. But literally, you could just, I bet if you went in the class calculator and put in 5 3-stars, Florida State's class would jump up possibly to top 10 or better. And you know for a fact Florida State's not going to go sign 10 3-stars. They may sign a couple more. There's nothing wrong with 3-stars. Again, you just go get the absolute best player you can get. Just so happens when you do your work and you continue to climb and stack dominoes and do better and better, you put the product on the field, you're able to recruit better. So it's a beautiful thing. We're seeing Mike Norvell basically recruit at Clemson's peak efficiency. Throughout their entire run on up until this very moment. And if you're a Clemson fan and you're looking at the recruiting rankings, at the jockeying that's going on, and you're looking at Florida State's average that's almost 93, it's not good. It doesn't feel good because, that's just high school. Clemson, they have to go home with those recruiting classes, and that's it. They do their best, whatever their hit rate, even if they've got the greatest the greatest hit rate in the history of the world, and it's like 60% or something on their guys they take out of high school, they still have to carry 40% of those classes. 40% of those classes never going to see the field. Okay, so you're bringing in the same amount of talent as Florida State. Meanwhile, Florida State's playing 5-card draw. They're going to keep the 10, 15 guys that are going to move forward in the program, and another 5, 10 after 2 years may be gone just because they were never going to they just weren't going to be able to make their way up the depth chart. If they can, if it's the opportunity there, if you're a Darius Washington, you're not going to get a foot in the ass. It's not like that. It's not like you have to show us something and you have to be able to compete for a starting position and all these things in a short amount of time, but you have to be a player that is willing to be a part of the climb. There's a certain type of guy you can take. And this has been the thing I've harped on, why it was so hard for Norvell to get to this level in recruiting. It could have been a lot easier. He could have signed some of those bullshit top 10 classes that Dan Mullen was famous for, where the guys don't end up making it to class. One of those ones that not Mike Norvell, excuse me, Jimbo Fisher did at Texas A&M in 2022, where you just bring in all this talent knowing it wasn't ever going to gel. No, they have been extremely picky. They've not been doing a bunch of negative recruiting and promising the world in that. No, they've been honest. Look, this is what you could get better at. This is what it's going to be like, yada, yada, yada. The battles in NIL is good, but they're not going to overpay. They're not going to pay trillions of dollars and all these things of these nature. They're going to pay the top dollar, what the top schools pay, for the position, and that's it. They're not going to do anything crazy to get one particular guy. Maybe if Jameis Winston 2.0 comes along, they'll decide to do that. But to my knowledge, it's not happened yet. They've been really, really lucky. They've been able to go with a fine-tooth comb. And now that they have what I just talked about earlier, they've got the results. They've showed what they are. The culture is there. Now they're able to sign top 100 guys all over the place. Whatever. We've got like pretty much everybody we signed outside of 2 guys are top 247 guys. That is something that didn't happen. The most, we signed 9 total in the 23 class, 16 in last class. We've already got 12. I know you're ready to take off, but really passionate about this. And I saw an article, if I can remember it after you get your takeoff, that did a really good job talking about this myself.
Yeah, I'll touch on first on the Clemson thing. Clemson is in the industry rankings on On3. They're ahead, but they also have two more recruits than we do. And any of those programs that are ahead of us, they already have 2 or more commitments right now. We're sitting at 13 and we're sitting in the top 10. That's a good thing. Second, with Clemson, it's I would do this comparison in recruiting philosophy. I would say that Mike kind of has a little bit of a Dabo philosophy, except he executes all 3 phases. Where Dabo does player retention and high school recruiting, but he doesn't execute the portal. Mike is executing all 3 now: portal, high school recruiting, and player retention. So, I mean, it gives us an edge where we didn't have an edge it would have took a little longer to build the program if we didn't have the portal or the way things are now. Um, to touch also on the whole Clemson thing, I think that they're we know what Clemson is now. They're still stout. He recruits in a specific philosophy, like every coach does. But I just think that that's caught up with them, as we all know. Their depth, their quality's there, but their depth is going to be either young or guys that he won't push out of the class or push off the roster and bring in transfer portal. So they're stuck. They're stuck with developing. If those kids don't develop, they lose them, but they don't replace them, but with younger players. So the overall is the separation of what's the difference between Mike, Norvell, and Dabo in philosophy. Is Mike's in a different thing right now, and he's just executing the same way Dabo does, but better.
Yeah. As a logical person, when you look at it now and what's going on now, what happened in the last class and how it's going in the 2025 cycle, they are a mirror image almost of each other recruiting high school. And you touched on it, I touched on it. Mike Norvell is either the best or arguably one of the best transfer portal retention recruiters. He keeps all the guys he needs to keep. You don't lose impact players. If you do, they're liable to come back. And to be able to do that, to be able to, send guys back. And we brought in 17 guys through the portal. You have an identical high school class and you added 17 guys to the program through the portal. That's game changers. Those are guys like Braden Fisk, and that's guys like Jared. That's guys like Marvin Jones Jr., Ventrell Cypress. And again, like you mentioned it, we had to do that.
Yeah.
Norvell, the portal was new. He was smart. He jumped on it. He had to do it when we were only signing 6 blue chips out of high school, 9 blue chips out of high school. He had to do it. And it was great. We had 9 guys drafted, 6 in the top 100, all transfer portal players. But now that high school has come around, now that 2021 kids are going to be seniors, all of a sudden it's the 22 class, it's the 23 class. By 25, 26, that's why we tell you guys it's going to be so scary in 26, 27, because all that's going to be over. You're going to have a top 10 high school recruiting roster with this added to it. We haven't really seen it. The closest we've seen to it is what Michigan did this year. But they don't recruit as good as Florida State is now and is moving towards. They were more top 12, more closer to what Florida State did last year is how Michigan recruited the 4 years leading up to their national championship. But they did pretty damn good out of the portal. And when you talk about culture, when you talk about bringing in specific people and how it matters, UGA won 2 of the last 3 national championships. They are the closest thing to a dynasty going on right now, killing it. But they just had like their 27th thing with law enforcement. This one way worse than the driving stuff. Torturing a child and all kinds of stuff. Kid Raw Thomas. Finally, I saw a couple national shows. Shout out to our guys over at the Daily Wire. What I'm having a total brain fart. Jake. What's our guy's name? Jake Crane. Jake and David Crane over there at the Daily Wire. They killed it. They did a good little segment covering Georgia, but they've been mum on it. Nobody has talked about it at all. Meanwhile, any one little thing happens with Florida State. When Florida State was in the limelight, winning national championships with Jameis Winston, I can like literally tell you every single law thing that happened for that 4-year span that we were good with Jimbo Fisher, because everyone was a giant story. Every player that came out from the draft they're going to look up stuff you didn't even know about that happened when they're in middle school. We're finding out what Dalvin Cook happened to him in 5th grade and what he got in trouble for in summer in the 7th grade. Meanwhile, all this stuff going on in Georgia is just worse than what people, I don't want to even hardly bring it up, but somebody died not that long ago. And it's like that's the date that demarks the number of 27 reckless drivings and different things to police. It's pretty crazy, but you can see a kind of, I'm not like Georgia's still going to be good this year and next year, but they have a legit cultural issue that they're going to have to address. And it's got to help Florida State recruiting in the state of Georgia. If you're recruiting the state of Georgia, and you're lucky enough to have a good support system, and money and things like that aren't all that matters, you're going to think twice about sending your kid to Georgia if you've got a chance to go play at Florida State. Just off of, we talk about all the time how perception is everything. Sure seems like a more family environment, a lot safer place there in Tallahassee. Or is that just, am I too close to it?
No, I would say Mike needs to take the philosophy that Bobby did and then Jimbo at one point. You got to close South Georgia off. That's one thing that Florida State was able to do. We closed South Georgia off to Georgia. They didn't come down there and recruit a lot of kids. They did, but they didn't get them outside of maybe Valdosta High, but and a few here and there. But it was like Florida State got its share, more than its share. But to speak to the culture of Georgia, as I stated in the previous show, and living in the state, this has been going on back since Mark Richt. You know, some of these things that are going, especially with the alcoholism and the driving, that's just nothing new. Uh, they sweep it under the rug. It never gets reported on a national scene because it's not going to be reported locally. We won't hear too much about it here. Haven't seen it on any local news. Um, it's actual a bad situation. Um, it's indicative on Kirby, but we know how this works. You know, with certain schools and certain places, those things always go unheard of. You know, it doesn't get reported. And
Yeah.
The situation with the Atlanta Star that happened when they reported something, and then next thing you know, they redacted the article and retracted and apologized and all of those things. That's how it works. You know, it can be true, but it's not going to be talked about.
Yeah. Not, you're 100% right. I just want to make sure that the audience doesn't, like, this isn't a down, like, yes,
Mhm.
that is true. There's shit going on with Rick. Stuff has gone
Mhm.
on with Florida State.
Mhm.
There's stuff at Alabama we don't know about right now. There's stuff
Mhm.
that happened with the Florida Gators when Urban
Mhm.
Meyer was there that we'll never know about. We're still waiting on that documentary. Zach
Mhm.
Smith over at Minister Sports has gave us the closest thing to some kind of actual shit that happened on behind the scenes over there. They did a
Mhm.
documentary on Netflix, and it was a puff piece. No
Yeah.
Percy Harvin, none of the Pouncey twins, none
Yeah.
of that stuff was in there. So we'll never know. But this Georgia situation has gotten to a point that it is unusual. It is not something that's ever it's there may have been one that was like that before, but no, this is not normal. This doesn't qualify the normal, the stuff that can get swept under the rug. It's got to the point now where they're forced people to have to start talking about it. And yeah, maybe it's my contention that Florida State, they're quicker to pull the trigger. But for whatever the case may be, enough people have talked about it. And once you hit the 27 and 18 months or whatever the case, it's got to be
Mhm.
some kind of new record. It'll be fun. We can go back and look like what's the top 10 worst uh,
Yeah.
ever arrest totals
Yeah.
in a certain time span. I know that one from Florida back in the day was pretty bad, but I don't want to stay on the negative stuff all night.
Yeah. Shout out to
Uh,
Lowndes High Gary once again.
Yes, sir. Lowndes is a big one.
Yeah.
South Georgia, all of Georgia is big
Mhm.
for Florida State. And we saw it last year. It was pretty much 50-50 our top players out of Florida and out of Georgia. And it's no big thing to go take 3 or 4 top 10 kids out of Georgia with
Mhm.
UGA doing what they're doing up there.
Yeah.
And the culture and what Florida State sells is just another one of those things. We've got some new rule changes coming in with the House settlement kind of getting finalized. House versus the NCAA. Forever, we were kind of talking about it off screen. It's been 85 scholarships since I can remember. I want to say pretty much my whole life. Uh, Modern college football has been 85 scholarships. Uh,
Mhm.
Most programs, you go up to 105 guys on your team, including walk-on.
Mhm.
Now, I'm not going to speak too deeply on this because I'm not sure exactly how it works, whether they have to be gray shirts or there's some
Mhm.
special thing you set them up as a purple shirt or a pink shirt, whatever the case may be. You hear guys like Dabo Sweeney talk about having 130 people on his
Mhm.
squad. So the new rule cuts from 85 scholarships, it goes up to 105. So no more of your official walk-ons. Basically, walk-on is a thing of the past. It goes away. And the
Mhm.
way I've understood it, and the question that I've had, why I haven't really gone in depth talking about here, is because I didn't know if that was going to be a hard cap. I knew that the 105 scholarships was part of the settlement, but does that
Mhm.
mean you have 105 scholarship athletes and then 20 walk-ons? Well, according to what I've read so far, no, it's
Mhm.
a hard cap, 105 players, so it's going to really actually shrink a lot of rosters. But your P5 or your P4, P3, whatever the hell we got left now, those guys, there's going to be 20 to 30 schools in the country that are going to be able to have 105 legit, top whatever recruits, like legit recruits, guys that would start at any G5 program, things like that. Now, luckily with NIL, what NIL has done, it's kept Georgia from stacking up a guy who could be playing at Florida State and go in the first round. He's not going to be third string. It doesn't make sense in this day and age. But what it does do is allow younger players to give a shot at going to Georgia or FSU without fear of like losing a bunch of time or anything like that. There's room. I said that wrong. What I'm getting at is we've talked about how Florida State, unlike Clemson, kind of they manage their roster. Guys go, guys come in. If you don't prove that you're going to like work out, if you're not part of the climb, if you don't look like you're going to have any chance of seeing the field in year 2 or 3, you just got to get pushed out. There's only 85 roster spots. Maybe they let you stay on as a walk-on and would pay you for a scholarship. That's something that was possible before this rule change. Okay. Now with 105 scholarships, Florida State maybe can look at the high school and say, okay, we take 2 or 3 more of these projects because we don't need you to produce in the next 2 years. You're not in competition with the senior. We're going to get out of the portal. We're able to take a chance on somebody. And, it used to be called a walk-on, but it would be guys who never really had a future. Now you're going to be able to take that 3-star offensive tackle from whatever. He's the 100th guy on the roster.
Yeah, it kind of allows you an explanation what they did prior to the 90 when it was 95 to 125 scholarships back, I think prior to 80, where you could stockpile certain talent. Like, I'm not saying that a lot of the kids you sit 4 stars and 5 stars and you hide them, but you, like you said, you'll be able to get some of those hidden gems, sit them in there and continue to develop them, and then they can see the field probably by sophomore, redshirt sophomore, redshirt junior, sort of treat them like Wake Forest treats its all of its starters. You stockpile a bunch of kids and then they see the field by the time they're sophomore, redshirt sophomores or juniors. And then they just create it would boost the maturity of the team too and the overall development, because those can become your core players instead of just your developmental players or players that you use to practice and run scrimmages to prepare for the game during the week. You up the talent level now too.
Yeah, maybe we could have had CJ State.
Yeah,
CJ gets his scholarship maybe a year or 2 sooner, so he doesn't leave. Who knows if it's just the scholarship and maybe it was just the idea of playing time of why he left. We never know. But things like that provide you an opportunity. That's a perfect opportunity to look at a guy who you could have provided a scholarship. We talked about it when Trevor Jackson came in and they signed him. So you think Norvell didn't know this was coming down the pipe?
Yep.
So essentially, you've got Trevor Jackson who signed as a PWO. He didn't even count on our recruiting class as our 17th blue chip high school recruit that we signed, but now he's a scholarship player.
Yeah.
Effective. Actually, I believe that's not true. I think this is effective 2025 season.
Okay.
When this actually goes into effect, like July of next year, something like that. But in the future, that's what this will mean. So again, a big development. Another one of those in there in the house settlement is NIL. It's going to affect the battles in. It's going to affect everybody. But again, to stay on this same vein of the hard work that Mike Norvell put in building this program, not being lazy, doing everything the right way. Michael Alford going from the Booster Association to become the athletic director, everybody being on the same page. Again, the battles in, coming in, Ingram Smith just being an amazing fan of the program, alumni, all those things, and just wanting to see the best things happen for the program. I'm not worried about the battles in putting out some bullshit bullshit contract. Well, this $600, any deal over $600 gets reviewed by the NCAA. Their third party arbiter, and then if that person, it goes to another one. I'm not going to get too into the weeds on it. But basically, should they decide that a deal was no good, they can suspend a player. The NCAA now will have the ability to take away eligibility from a player if they deem that Florida State's compliance allowed a bad contract to go through with the NIL group.
Yeah.
So that could be a real problem if Jimbo Fisher was still at Texas A&M with that shit they had going on over there. Just as an example, that could be a real problem for some of these schools that are trying to do these deals for $13 million for a quarterback. Some of these deals that people are doing that are 3 times what the actual price on the market is to get one particular 5-star. That's where you start running into issues, because the give and the take, they have to be, outlined. All that stuff has to be done very professionally. I think that's most of them, but what do you think of that wrinkle of it?
The question I would have with it is, down the road, will we have a lot of litigation problems? And in the situation like we had in the state, was the state of Tennessee, when they got involved in blocking the NCAA on certain things, how much of this will be enforceable overall? Because, we look at the NCAA now as a shark with no teeth, basically. How much of this can they truly enforce, George, without having player representation or even school representation through the state, and particularly if it's a state-funded university, fighting against this, and then taking them back to the Supreme Court, and then we find out we're right back in court again. So it's going to be interesting to see when this all kicks in, how this works and how enforceable, and how will they enforce any offenses that they find.
Because players are going to have lawyers, schools are going to have lawyers, looking to deem that unconstitutional or whatever you want to call it, or unenforceable. If they're going to, take away a guy's eligibility, it's going to be a mess. There's still currently lawsuits going on. There's going to be a lot more. This isn't the final thing. This is just the first step. There's a lot of stuff, but we could probably do a whole episode going forward. But I just really wanted to point out the kind of main points there, and just how Florida State has aligned itself really perfectly for these new changes to come in, and for them to grab them and move forward. Same thing with the in-helmet communication we've got coming in. That's going to be huge for Florida State. That multi-time transfer rule, when it came out of nowhere as an answer to those suits from Tennessee and everybody else, I mean, that could have really kicked you in the ass. That really could have messed you up. If you didn't have your house in order, everybody could just leave all of a sudden. I mean, that was a giant amount of leverage that went back to the players. So for Florida State to continue with their attainment the way it's been, and just to consistently hear from the players, like the coaches don't even have to say it anymore. It's Darius Washington up there at the podium talking about how different everything is, talking about the standard and all those things. A guy from 2019 who wasn't even recruited by Mike Norvell. You see what he's done with Pat Payton and all these guys who were 350, 450, 650 when they came out of high school. Now they're all juniors, seniors, getting ready to go into the draft early in the first couple rounds. And the guys that were recruiting and at their respective positions are number 24, number 47, number 58, whatever the case may be. It's a whole nother level. So it's really, really beautiful. I'm going to throw the number up here in case anybody has any questions on anything going on in the news. Of course, everybody knows it was kind of widely reported that it's extremely unlikely Florida State announces their exit from the ACC before August 15th. Therefore, it would most likely leave us in the ACC for 24 and 25 and line up an exit possibly in 2026. At the risk of getting in trouble here, I think this count is correct. Somebody had just posted there's some kind of meeting going on. The FSU provost today also said he expects Florida State to be AAU certified in the next 3 years, while also having over $500 million annually in research expenditures. Dr. Jim Clark updated over 100 people in attendance at the event held at Biltmore Estate by the Emirati of FSU alumni. So I don't speak Latin. Emeriti, the Emeriti members are those that graduated over 50 years ago from FSU. So boom, that comes from Brian Pate on Twitter. Hopefully he's telling the truth. He's a Wake Forest person there. Boom. So for everybody that's saying we're just making it up and we're pulling out of our ass, Florida State isn't even trying to get AAU, We told you about the Board of Trustees
Mm-hmm.
meeting. It was a whole bunch of research and academic gobbledygook that you would never, it wouldn't be fun to talk about. I'm just telling you, I tried to watch it. It was really boring, but look, we're looking to build hospitals all over the place, medical research facilities, and we're going for that AAU. And here you have the FSU provost saying within 3 years, FSU will be AAU certified. So
Yes.
now what did I start this segment with? I told you that Florida State, the news, the big rumor is they will not be getting out of the ACC in 2025. It'll be 2026. So I ask you, and within 3 years, that means at the latest 2027.
Mm-hmm.
What would that mean for FSU going to the Big Ten? It all lines up pretty well in my head.
Yeah, it lines up real good, George, when you think about it, because what has also been in conversation about 2027 and particularly the whole ESPN contract situation with the ACC. So it all sets up between 25, 26, 27, those years. Being AAU accredited, you going out the door, everything, all your ducks in order. Stadiums rebuilt. You should have a new practice facility. Everything should be ready to go for you to enter into the Power 2 conference where you're supposed to be, and you have all your ducks in a row. So it makes sense. You have the AAU accreditation, you have a renovated stadium, new facilities all over campus, and research and development dollars and facilities built. It's the best thing to do.
It is a really, really, really beautiful time to be
Yeah.
a Florida State Seminole. We've tried to let you guys know. We know that haters and people looking for attention are going to be negative. You're always going to be have negative. It doesn't matter how good you're doing, how bad you're doing. You're going to have positive, how negative you're doing, how bad you're doing. You're going to have, it's never ending. You're always going to have the yin to your yang and the yang to your yin. It's just the way the world
Exactly.
goes. But when you're right, when you know you're not lying, when you get to
Mhm.
have somebody like Mike Norvell and he's proved it to you and you've seen what's coming, when you've
Mhm.
came out here and said something and then 2 years later you can point back to it and say, look, this is exactly how it turns out. It's really a beautiful thing. You've seen it. We've all seen what he can do recruiting, whatever, 30% out of high school. We've
Mhm.
seen what he can do completely strapped for talent, not being able to recruit for 18 months from the time he gets the job, being
Mhm.
stuck with all these things with an APR that is just terrible, still having to really focus on academics, all these things, really tough scheduling, the first
Mhm.
couple years coming out. He handled all that stuff and was able to win 10 games in 2022, 13 games in 2023. And now you see just a very steep climb of talent year over year. It's going to be really beautiful to see if he can do more with more. I
Mhm.
know he can. And somebody told me crazy, said I was crazy, and that saying that everybody's sleeping on the Knowles this year. Maybe it's just because I am, because I'm too close to it. But I keep seeing people compare DJU to Joe Milton, and say that there's some kind of ceiling, and they're going to be pretty good, probably still in the ACC, but there's still going to be a legitimate drop off. Like as we get closer and closer we get to the season, I just, it's going to be damn near just as good a team. It's going to be a different team.
Mhm.
It's going to happen different. They're not going to be just as polished coming off the bat, but
Mhm.
this offensive line is going to stuff last year's offensive line, in a locker. The defensive line may take a little time to build, but last year's defensive line wasn't hitting on all cylinders like it was at the end of the year at the beginning. It took a little bit of time. Linebacker, you lose some guys, but that overall, the room is so much more dynamic than it's ever been for Mike
Mhm.
Norvell. Like wide receivers, we don't have the Jersey guys, but again, more talent there since
Mhm.
he's been here. Quarterback, same thing. That room is way more talented than it's ever been.
Yeah.
It's what really drives me crazy, Deshaun, is like it took people until 2023 to finally embrace Jordan Travis and talk about him like he was a legit quarterback and not some kind
Mhm.
of cause for concern. All 21, all 22, I'm arguing with people on Twitter acting like Jordan Travis cost them the game because he didn't make some play in the fourth quarter. I was
Mhm.
like, you don't understand what he's doing for the offensive line. Like, he just made, you
It's
couldn't run shit in 2021 without his leverage on the line. And then it
Yeah.
was a bit less in 2022 and less in 23 just because he was more of a thrower. He still had that ability.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, DJU, he's way better than anything Jordan Travis ever was, except for 23's preseason. So
Mm-hmm.
let's have the 24 season and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, the whole DJU debate is just this development. When he was at Clemson, there's some questions to how he was developed. But he has a 3-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. So I'm going to take that anytime. That 3-to-1, George. I'm going to take that ratio, touchdown to interception, anytime. He actually developed a lot better when he went to Oregon State than he was at Clemson. As we've seen since he's left Clemson, they're still looking the same way that they were when he was there at quarterback. The quarterback who replaced him still has moments, who was a 5-star himself, looks similar to DJ in certain aspects of the game. So that tells you that's not a DJ problem. That's a Clemson problem. Now, when he went to Oregon State, did he throw 21 or 23 touchdowns last year for
Yeah,
Oregon
something like
State?
that. 22,
Yeah,
23.
and he had like maybe 4 to 7 interceptions. I'm not sure anymore. I have to really look into that. I think that's what it was around, either 4 or 7, maybe
Yeah,
7.
he has to.
Yeah, but there's been some talks, even when he was at Oregon State, they worked on his mechanics. He's getting his mechanics redefined again here, just some touch-ups on some things. So his throwing motions, the cannon in the arm is not a problem. He can make every quarterback doesn't make every throw perfectly. What you like was said, I think Mike had said it. They're not going to maximize his strengths. They're going to minimize the weaknesses. So what you do is you work on the weaknesses. What we do know what he is, he's a big quarterback with a big arm. He can make the decisions. He's patient and he'll operate within the system. That's all you're asking for. He doesn't have to get outside of himself. But to be honest, I think he's capable of that. He's shown in certain games against us and games against the Wake Forest game, he got outside of himself. The game against Notre Dame, he got outside of himself. So it's there. It's just asking how much of it when he was at Clemson is just him operating on his talent and not development. And then going to Oregon State, how much it was the overall talent that he was around, as well as development. I think he'll be developed properly here, continue to maximize what he can do in his strengths. We got a lot of speed at wide receiver, and he has a big arm. So we're going to stretch the field, run the ball, play defense.
Yeah, without a doubt. Clemson did nothing but go downhill from the time he left. We're going to see if they have a bounce back year this year. But I agree, everything that Jonathan Smith did at Oregon State was good. It was a great experience for him. I think that was, they had some talent, but it's one of those things where I think he's going to be in a lot better situation this year. I think Mike Norvell is going to show his best year, and people act like it'd be crazy. This will be his best job yet. Maybe if he can do all these great things with DJU. I don't think it's crazy to go from 3-to-1 touchdown ratio to 4-to-1, and that would be that'd be huge. That'd be giant. That'd be everything we need. But we've got our first caller. We've got a question right here on the line. What can we do for you?
Hey, George. Great to see you guys again. About what they said.
Oh, you broke up on us, buddy.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. You guys are right. I think it was a Clemson problem with DJ, because you look at Clay Cudnick, and he's struggling pretty much. All the films I've seen, like, he didn't have good receivers there. Like, they weren't recruiting good receivers like he's going to have here. So I think he's going to be absolutely just fine. He's got good arm. They said he was like a deer in the headlights. I don't know what people were watching, but I think DJ is going to be fine. This offense is going to be a complete nightmare for everybody. Thanks, George. You guys are great. Have a good one.
Thank you.
No problem, man. Thanks for calling. Yeah, I agree. It's just one of those things. It's like you have to have something to talk about. It's almost like not fun to talk about. Cam Newton, everybody got on Cam Newton's ass about talking about the difference between game manager
and game changer.
Game changer. And to a certain point, he was like, yeah, even Tom Brady is a game manager. And I didn't agree with that, because Tom Brady really has, especially in his younger days, was making some crazy throws. But the point that he was making is guys that don't go get outside themselves, like you were talking about DJ did when he was younger.
Mhm.
Guys that are just going to get the ball like a point guard in basketball where it needs to go. They're going to, if there's somebody's double covered, we're throwing away from him. We're going to the guy in single coverage. Just getting the ball where it needs to go, making the perfect handoff to the back, all these different things. You've got a team, you've got an offensive line, you've got a running game that's so damn good. You've got enough receivers that if you can just limit turnovers, get the ball where it needs to go, hit your deep shots when they're there, the offense can go as far as you need it to go. And it can be like an absolute, Lamborghini. That would be great. And then you have game changers. Somebody like Cam Newton was, even though he may not be able to hit all the same throws within the pocket that a Tom Brady can, he has an ability to make plays and just take off running on third down and completely change the scoreboard. Okay. That's a game changer. Jordan Travis, in my opinion, is more likely to buy 7 seconds back there and hit a 80-yard bomb for a touchdown because Keon Coleman got behind everybody, or hit an 80-yard run. DJU isn't going to hit an 80-yard run. He's going to get 4 yards and go down and not get himself hurt. No, things of that nature. And so that's what I'm looking at. It's like, and it goes to what Mike Norvell said. That's what Mike Norvell said when asked about it. He's like, he's exactly what we thought he was going to be and more. So it's like, you're telling me Mike Norvell doesn't have eyeballs? He can't see the same film that you are all seeing? And that's exactly what you want? Like, yeah, he's going to be just fine. I think ultimately, unless I was going to come out here and say it's going to be 30 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, a Heisman candidacy and all that, like that would be off the top. But I think most people's kind of expectations of kind of the same season we've had, seen him get, maybe you get 24 touchdowns and 10 picks. I think they're going to be pleasantly surprised. I think it's going to be closer to, 30, 33 touchdowns and maybe the same amount of picks, maybe 7 or 8 picks, something like that. I think that's the kind of year that you're going to get. Plenty of time to break into the season. That's a huge part of it. You get Georgia Tech, which will be kind of tough. He's going to have to outduel a confident kid over there, depending on how that game goes. The media isn't high on Georgia Tech. I think they're more middle of the pack than bottom of the conference.
I agree.
But that's just me.
No, I agree with you, George. We'll get into that game when we get closer and breakdowns because I'm right there with you. I'm not one of those who are sleep at the wheel when it comes to Georgia Tech because they play hard and they got a coach that is competent. But to touch back on DJ, he also adds something else dynamic. We had the quarterback run game with Jordan, but this is different because it's 250 pounds coming downhill. So you basically, if you choose to bring in DJ or somebody to play a fullback role, you're basically running a power run game now because you got a 230, 240 blocking for a 250 pound downhill. And he may not break 80 like Jordan could, but he can damn sure pound for, like you said, 6 yards in a cloud of dust. I'll take it. Those short yardage runs we had, but we had some issues. I think we get that push because you got a 250 pound man pushing up on the line also now. So those short yardage issues we have, that can change the dynamic of that. It also allows you to be a little bit more creative with your power run game, with your backs and with DJ. It just adds to it. He's a quarterback and he's a willing runner. So him being a willing runner, it allows you, I think in 1 year he did have like 200 or 300 yards rushing. So he's capable of running, giving you 400 yards on the season rushing and possibly 5 to 6 touchdowns on the ground. So if you add that to 24 to 25 touchdowns passing and let's say 7 interceptions, I'll take that because he's making up for it in so many other aspects of the game, and he'll make the offense more versatile. Going downhill, add him to the running game. I mean, you can run the same counter play or GT pull with him. It makes a big difference here in being able to short yardage. I think that's something that's been an Achilles heel for us. It was last year and it was, I think, 22. We had a couple of issues there. He'll really change that dynamic there.
Yeah, it's a totally different kind of threat to the run. All of a sudden, you're getting leaned on by a 250-pound quarterback, and it becomes a thing on, third down, or if they're going for it on fourth down, to where like you really got to get the jumbo set out there. And like you said, that opens the playbook for him to roll out on a bootleg or do whatever else. And that's how you see all these touchdowns on 4th and short, third and short, because when you have to sell out to try, because basically if you run any kind of your base 4-2-5, your 4-3, anything like that, the quarterback sneak is just a guaranteed first down on your fourth and, outside of the center of the guard, just completely eating shit and just completely olaying. DJU's going to get that first down. And that happened to us. We saw that in the Florida State Clemson game in 2022, especially in the middle of 8 of the game. Anytime they got the third or fourth down, DJU would make something happen. He would hit a receiver, or he would roll out, or run out through the CF, and it was really terrorizing us that game. So yeah, I'm all fired up for it. I don't think we talked much about practice. I intended to. We kind of flew through it, but again, there's not a ton of information. We got a pretty good bit out of Mike Norvell after the first and second practices, but there's been a little bit we can glean. Brock Glenn has killed it. He had a crazy throw to Kyle Morlock. Tight ends have been a position that was a kind of a question mark. We've been kind of wondering, can Kyle Morlock step up? But I thought two big people to talk about is Kyle Morlock killing it, and also apparently our guy Amari out of high school is killing it at tight end. He's earning praise all over the place. So you expected Landon Thomas to get a lot of buzz right off the bat at tight end, but it turns out it's Amari Williams, the guy that you thought was going to be the defensive end. They're talking about looks like one of these once in a generation athletes out there at tight end.
Yeah. It's just a process with him, with his development. As he stated, they're kind of using him as a tweener. They're going to work him a little bit at defense, but mostly develop him on the offensive side of the ball, which a lot of people who watched any film and knew anything high school wise, I've heard people say, yeah, he probably would be better. He's an elite level tight end. He's a good athlete. He could develop as a defensive end, but his highest upside, his ceiling probably will be on the offensive side of the ball. So it's going to be interesting to watch. He's one of those particular kids, just like Ashton, that I'm watching hard because following his dad, Mo, went to the same high school I did. So, I'm looking at this one like your own kid, I want to see this one really excel, and Amari really just get out there and get to work and become a star.
Heck yeah. And it sounded like it. I had a thought the other day with all this talk about him potentially growing. He's still really young. Again, a kid that reclassified, so he got to Florida State kind of a year early. If he stays at tight end, keeps working there, keeps gaining weight, who knows? Maybe this is one of those kids that grows into a tackle frame and ends up making, a couple $100 million in the NFL as a tackle time he leaves here. But who knows? We'll see. Regardless, he's going to get on the field, but it looks like tight end, is going to be early. Like I said, Kyle Morlock really, really kind of looking like a veteran there on the offense. Elijah Moore, I completely lost his name the other day. Elijah Moore, though, he continues to keep making plays on offense. He's a true freshman that has just really been a standout. LaWayne McCoy has also been pretty damn good. I believe one of the coaches shouted him out the other day in one of their pressers. Running back, Roydell Williams continues to do things.
Yeah.
Keziah Holmes, I heard flashed here in today's third practice. Keziah is somebody that I was like, I thought for sure he was just going to explode. He was going to take advantage, be the best running back in the spring, and do all these things. I didn't necessarily see us getting Roydell, bringing in 3 guys out of high school, all the things. He kind of got lost in the shuffle. I don't know if he got dinged up. He didn't quite have the spring I thought he was going to have. Then you come out in the spring game. I can't remember if he fumbled. Something happened early where it wasn't he wasn't doing great, but he really battled through, showed some toughness in that spring game. So I'm glad to hear of him doing big things, because he's got the entire skill set. He's got everything in his arsenal. Like, if he could get it together, it could be really, really, really inspiring to watch him. But yeah, a lot of fun. Just a stacked running back room. For him to be kind of the third or fourth person you bring up with the time he spent here, it just goes to tell you how good it is. Between Koafili and Roydell and those guys, man, it's going to be a lot of fun. And the offensive line is the offensive line.
Yeah, I was watching Sporadics, I believe, last night, and 3-6 quoted out also. Happy birthday, 3-6, if you're watching. But he quoted Roydell, what his perception of, and I give him credit for this, his perception of Roydell was a little different. He thought he would be much more your downhill power back, but Roydell actually has more breakaway speed. So he has to go back. He said he has to go back and reevaluate Roydell's ability. Roydell may be similar to Trey a little bit with a little bit more vision as far as the ability to break away. He's faster than what the perception was when he came and enrolled and transferred. As far as the backfield, it's one of the healthiest rooms we have on the team. Yak has that position group on target, and Mike has a history as a head coach, even as a coordinator. Running back is not going to be an issue under Mike Norvell. Even if I mean, he's going to find a running back. Even when we had the tough seasons his early years, we still had decent running game. I mean, he's going to find a back, so that's not a problem. I'm really confident in that. I like some things that I'm hearing out of the DB room, which we expect with Fintrell in his second year in the program and in the system. He's starting to get comfortable in what's being asked after transitioning from one scheme. A lot of times we don't understand that these kids who transfer in and the players, sometimes they have to get acclimated to a different scheme. Where they might have played a zone on defense where we run trail man, or they might run a lineman. Particular offensive lineman may used to downhill dual blocking. They don't do a lot of pulling, but we do a lot of pulling here. So, we have to allow these players to get time to develop, so it's going to be really interesting to continue to watch on Sunday how things going forward with practice.
Yeah, for sure. As far as the running game, that's been the main thing we've harped on. Look, guys, this is going to be the best running game we've had in a long, long time. People forget of everything that was wrong with Florida State when Mike Norvell showed up. The offensive line was the top of the list. Florida State had the worst offensive line in all of college football. I'm talking about G5. It didn't matter. We were the worst in all of college football. Our offensive linemen were I believe there was 796 linemen. We had 794, 795, and 796. Then we had one in the 400s and one in the 300s. But it was bad. It was one of the worst things you ever seen. I'm not trying to talk shit to anybody that was here at that time. I love you all. I hate it didn't work out, but that is just what it was. And I don't think it was their fault whatsoever. And you see it with a guy like Darius, who's just an absolute beast now. Darius Washington, our starting offensive tackle. But yeah, this offensive line is going to absolutely mash. It got close. It was pretty damn good last year. One of the, I'd say, top 10 offensive line out there. People really aren't putting much weight. It's like they act like it's hit its ceiling with kind of the current people that are here. They think they can't be no better. I'm here to tell you they can. They're going to take a big step this year. I feel like a bigger step from this year, from last year, than we saw from 22 to 23. We have not had a player like Darius Washington at tackle in a long, long time. He was not this guy going into the season last year, having left tackle locked up, bringing in Richie Leonard and Terrence Ferguson from Alabama. That is some heft that you only had in Keandre Jones when you bring in Ferguson. When you bring in a guy like Richie Leonard, that's somebody that you really you lost when our guy left and went to the NFL, Dylan
Gibbons. You're talking about Gibbons when he graduated. Yeah.
We lost that glue guy, super smart dude that could play guard, was going to play with his leg falling off, all that stuff, just kind of make the play, and he's better. He's that's the prototypical dude that Alex Atkins wanted to bring in. He ended up going to Florida. Florida did a damn good job developing him. And you can get him back. He was their best guard they had last year. Add that on, just add it on this year, and you bring back Byers, who had, he had beaten out Bless. Bless wasn't going to compete with him. Bless left. And again, just like you brought up with Finchel Cypress, who I'll talk about as well, you bring back Byers for year two. You don't think Byers is going to make a jump from year one to year two? It's going to be the same thing. Same thing with Keandre Jones, Maurice Smith. All these guys we've upgraded and brought back. All the dudes from 21 and 22 are still here. They're still here on the team. They're still getting better. So yeah, I cannot wait. This offensive line, it's all 6'3" and up, 320 pounds and up. It's a beautiful thing. We are 10, 12 deep with really 8 or 9 legit all ACC guys that really could play anywhere in the ACC. It hasn't been that way in a long, long time. And after this year, it goes to Freakonomics. It goes to, the next level thing. You
Yeah.
start going to those lines that just can absolutely do crazy stuff. A line like this takes time. It's only going to happen when everybody's seniors. And that's what
Yeah.
we got right now. We've
Yeah.
got 8, 9, 10 seniors, whatever it is. And they've all been developed. They've all reached maturity, the right size. It's going to be a ton of fun. But yeah, I agree with Fentrell Cypress as well. Fentrell, man, he took way too much heat last year. I don't think he was bad at all. I think he was pretty damn good in man coverage. You already touched on that, how maybe he didn't play as much man, didn't play the same scheme at Virginia. And along the same lines of that, he just didn't play as many snaps of significance at Virginia. You're at fucking Virginia.
Yeah.
So
And
if
they're
you're
going through
covering the best
struggles. Yeah.
receiver, whatever the case may be, they're just going to throw it away from you. Like, why the fuck am I going to try the only player on Virginia? What the fuck? Like,
Yeah.
Everybody's throwing with their all ACC corner. They're throwing at their linebacker whose shoes are untied.
Yeah.
Whatever the case may be. So when you come to Florida State and you've got Jerry Jones in the slot who's just locking jokers up, and you've got Renardo Green who's locking up, Malik Neighbors week 1 on national TV, who do you think is going to get tried? And Joe Franklin is going to get tried. They're going to try to get their people lined up on him, yada, yada, yada. But between him, Quindarius Jones, hearing good things about him out there, you're hearing good things about Devontae Brown breaking in. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that has stood out. Is there anything that stood out from comments from practice or interviews or anything like that?
Hakeem's leadership. You can see it in the videos, and it's been mentioned that he's taken on the leadership role early. So it's interesting to see that his relationship and how the receivers come along, because it's very important that they gel together and they get with DJ and they help, especially those who've been in the system more than 1 year, help get DJ acclimated and they get on the same page as far as comfortability in the route running, knowing where they're going to be. You know how that works, the intricacies of football. I add one more name that you didn't mention on that O-line that may be a good player to help out too, is Jacob Rizzi, the transfer from Harvard, who may be a swing guy, replacing Washington as that swing guy. But getting back to the wide receiver room, that's the one person with Hakeem that I'm interested in seeing his development going forward. But I've heard a lot about him becoming a big leader. So that's a start, especially coming off of, you're just a freshman last year, and you're already taking leadership role in a room with upperclassmen. So, I mean, I'm real interested in seeing that. And also Morlock too, in his interview. It looks like he's gotten bigger. This will be his second year in the system, second year playing at this kind of level of football. So if he can do some of the things he did when he was at Shorter and his versatility, then look out.
It looks like it. It looks like in practice, especially compared to this time last year, the little bit of clips and things we've seen, it's slowed down for him. He's just out there playing ball. Look, even on into halfway through the season last year, he a bit stiff and kind of just thinking. So yeah, I agree 100%. I think second year is going to take a big leap. And I believe it was him that was speaking so highly of Amari Williams when he was out there doing as a true freshman. So that says a lot for him. I totally agree about Rizzi. I think, and this is what Norvell said and the different coaches we've heard from, like this, let's wait till we see what happens Sunday when the pads get on. We can figure out what we really have there. But everything else, the picking up the playbook, the brains, the work ethic, everything's there. If he could be that swing guy, that backup guy, that could be huge. They're starting him out at center. They're going to move him, try him at guard. It would be huge if we had a center that we could pull Maurice Smith out of the game when he gets dinged up. But even if it's only not the game, even if it's only 10, 15 snaps, so that he just doesn't, hurt something, totally break something. He just strains something. He can go get some treatment to maybe, get a brace on, whatever the case may be. Some people in the chat talking about they think Rizzi beats out Maurice Smith. We'll see. I've seen plenty of people try.
Say that.
Casey Roddick come in, all these things. I think people don't realize how good Maurice Smith is.
Exactly.
I think they're going to realize by the end of the year. I think Byers, Washington, Smith is pretty locked up. And the guards, we're deep at guard, man.
I'm questioning the Byers thing because you may see a Otto. Rob Scott can play on that side. If Washington's playing left, you can move Rob to the right. You also have Simmons that can possibly play on that right side also. Rizzy beating out Smith, I agree with you. I don't understand. I don't think that happens. You got to understand how the center relationship with the quarterback works. You can't just plug anybody in as center, especially their first year, because they have to know the offense and the calls just like the quarterback does. So just plug and play at center as their first year. I don't think that would work in this particular system that Mike runs. I was answering I was responding to a comment and just touching on it. I don't think replacing Smith. We've seen, like you said, many a time, many of people trying to write off Smith, and he's been able to. He's an Iron Man. He plays hurt. I like that. He plays tough. The only knock on Smith is he's just a little small, and that kind of hampers him. You know, he's a little underweight for a center, but he's gained so much weight over the years. It's been hard for him to keep that consistent 295 to 300. I don't even know.
Been hurt.
Yeah,
that's why.
it's been hurt because of that, but it is because he played early in his career, and
exactly.
it stunted his development and growth.
Yep.
So it's been hard for him to maintain the weights because he's always hurt, so he can't always get the workout time he needed.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's all been during the season.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you can do to stay healthy and stay on the field. That's kind of what I was getting at. I was looking at that same comment. If you have somebody that can spell him without completely wrecking the game, when he gets dinged up, if he can miss the fourth quarter or whatever the case may be, so he can stay in the weight room and stay healthy, that would be huge for him. When it comes to somebody besides Byers starting at tackle, as much as I would love to see a red shirt or see a freshman or a redshirt freshman or a true sophomore, I believe it when I see it. I think that would be that would be a stunning development. I think the idea is for Otto and Simmons hopefully to be able to get a couple hundred snaps. I think that would be huge, even if it's
good.
If we can get up on Georgia Tech or whatever, Memphis, Boston College. Definitely would love to, and I think we desperately need those guys to get a couple hundred snaps before next year, because you're going to be relying on somebody, whether it's Otto or Simmons or one of those guys is going to have to slide out and play tackle for you when Washington and Byers are gone.
Yeah.
But the numbers are so limited at tackle, and with Harris leaving, and also the move of moving Robert Scott inside. Like, if you think he's going to compete there, I don't understand why they ever come out and say that. Unless the recovery has completely changed. Like, I do agree. I think Robert Scott can play tackle, and he will have a shot there. But it's kind of a damning thing with Robert Scott. He was your best guy when he came in as a true freshman. Still remained one of your top offensive linemen. He has injuries really hurt him in a year. It's really curious. There's a wild card there. Because, like you said, he's played left tackle his whole career. Now Washington has that set up, but who knows? Does he end up? Byers could get hurt on the first play of the first game, and Scott has to go in. He's the one guy he can go in and play it right now. Maybe they put him at left and slide there. Who knows? Who knows? There's any number of things that can happen. But at the end of the day, the depth, the seniority, everything across the board. This is the best offensive line unit FSU has had since at least 2015. You might could argue 14, in my opinion.
Yeah. I agree, man. I look at it as we'll find out, because this is the stage that we're in with practicing, that we're going to find out who's going to get those positions.
They got to get hit in the mouth first.
Yeah, hit in the mouth. To answer the question is Julian. With Julian, I think they've kicked him inside, I believe, and he's possibly going to play a guard role, maybe left or right side. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about tackle, but I do know that I've heard that they kicked him inside to play the interior now. So we'll have to wait and see how everything plays out with the line, man. But it's a good problem to have because of the experience. And I'd rather be experienced. We don't have a lot of experience in certain areas. We lost a lot. We know that. We lost a lot on offense. But where we have the most returning starters or players, contributors, is on the offensive line. I can work with that.
What if Rob could take a red shirt this year?
That would be nice, to be honest with you. But I don't think
how much could we use him next year?
Yeah, we could use him next year. But sooner or later, as we all know, we're going to have to play, to get the next guy. So you're talking about Lucas Simmons, Otto, Early.
Oh yeah, but I mean everybody's going to be gone. I mean,
everybody's going to be gone. So you're gonna have to rebuild your offensive line next year. or you're going to have a lot of unproven players.
Oh
But
yeah,
let next year's problem be next year's problem.
facts.
As far as this year's problem, that's a place of experience, and I rather have that and have maybe an inexperienced wide receiver right now room than have an inexperienced offensive line room.
Yeah.
I
And I
really,
think, yeah, I think that's where their minds are. You know, hoping that Otto and Simmons can spell the tackles instead of Robert Scott
mm-hmm,
for the future of the program. You need to get those guys snaps at tackle when Scott's
exactly.
gone. So I'm sure that plays into Scott moving inside. It damn
Mm-hmm.
sure plays into Julian Armella moving inside.
Yes.
You know, you can't let Julian Armella's development hamper that of Simmons and Otto, but you also can't let him go to waste. You need him to play.
Mm-hmm.
So there was talk of him transferring. I was really happy. He stayed, decided to
Yeah.
come and compete inside. And that just goes to what I was saying about how freaking deep we are at guard. I
Yeah.
mean, it's crazy. Keandre Jones, Richie Leonard,
Ferguson,
Ferguson, Bryson Estes, Jalen Early.
Mm-hmm.
They moved in Robert Scott. They moved in
Mm-hmm.
Julian Armella. I mean, we've got 8 guards that are good. So
Yeah.
when they go to run power and some of these crazy goal line things where you end up with like 7, 8 offensive linemen out there and stuff, like
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be a lot of fun. This is going to be
You
the
can go
first
jumbo.
time in a
Mhm.
long time that maybe I'm proven wrong and maybe we're beating our heads against the wall, but 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, I'm going to be grinning like the Cheshire cat. Like it's going to be a fun year.
I'm gonna
And
add.
Robert Scott is practicing as far as I know. Sorry, go
Yes.
ahead.
No, go ahead. I was gonna touch on one more thing that we talked about prior with DJ, and it was Florida State was ranked 44th in the nation last year in red zone efficiency offensively. You know, the number 1 program in the country was in offensive efficiency in the red zone? Oregon State. You think he didn't help? Yeah, he helped. I know they had talent there with Martinez and such, but I'm pretty sure you just line a quarterback like that. We go back and watch some games. He played a big part in that too. So he can really lift that. That's another. I was just naming it as another area where he can help in the run game.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I forgot to comment on it earlier. But yeah, James was having fun with his comment. I think he said that a couple times, you know, talking about from when he very first saw Roydell come in. But yeah, I've been pretty consistent on the fact that, yeah, that's like Roydell is faster. He's not as fast as Trey Benson, but he's much faster than what we had in Trayshawn Ward. He's somewhere in between. He is the best of Trayshawn Ward and Trey Benson put together. He can fit through those tiny cracks, but he can also get gone. You don't have to get gone by 10 yards. You
Yeah.
just have to get to the end zone, and he's
Yeah.
got that. He's got that where that dude's going to be diving at the 5-yard line and missing. He's got that kind of speed, but he's also able to go in those tiny holes where you think it's over and pop out on the other side. He's got an uncanny balance. I tried to explain this and butchered the shit out of it on another show, but whenever somebody grabs your ankle and then your other foot gets stopped, there's an ability to like, you know, take that other leg over and skip it over and just pull free and keep going. And it's the damnedest thing if you ever seen it happen. It looks like a skip on the football field, but very few guys can do it. He has that. He has that crazy ability. And you bring back Lawrence Toafili, who's just gotten better and better and better and became a well-rounded running back. Who I was talking about preseason. There's a chance he could just be running back 1. He can do it all. But yeah, blown away by Roydell Williams. He ended all that talk. The best thing's going to be Roydell at running back 1 and Toafili to remain at tailback. It's going to be nasty. It's going to be really nasty. You got all the young guys. You've got Keziah Holmes.
Yes.
I can't wait to see what happens. It's going to be a ton of fun. And again, with DJU, with that heavier, you know, version of the different things they're going to be able to do. It's going to be a different Florida State team than we've seen at Florida State. We said last year was going to be the closest thing we saw to a Memphis kind of offense. This one's going to be way, way, way closer. If you want to know what's going to happen this year, I would say go to Memphis, look at those stat sheets and the kind of numbers they put up in 2018, 2019, and look at that. You may can skew it a little bit more towards rushing than passing than what they did, just kind of with how we're set up. But we've got the running backs that can catch the passes. We've got the quarterback that can run, but way closer to what Memphis type of running was going on. Way better than anything he had up there, in my opinion. So
Yeah,
it's going to be a lot of fun.
It is, man. It's going to be interesting to follow. We still haven't seen the best yet, and it's still coming. We ain't seen the best numbers yet.
Yeah,
Mike's offense.
sorry, go ahead. I thought you.
No, I was just saying under Mike's offense. I've said it before. I just stating the obvious, but if you really, like you said, you brought up the stats and the numbers. He's had 1,000-yard rusher, 4,000-yard passer, 2,000-yard rushers in one season. 1,000-yard receiver, a 4,000-yard passer, and 2,000-yard rushers in one season. He can do it in different ways, and we haven't seen that level yet. And the talent the floor is being raised to where we're going to see it. It's coming. We haven't seen the best yet. We've seen he's done more with less. When he can do more with more, it's gonna be a scary sight to see.
Facts on top of facts. Everybody wants to talk about we return no production. All these people return this production. Florida State doesn't return any production, yada yada. Yeah, we do. The real production goes on in the trenches, and we bring a ton of it back. Again, guys, we missed Jen tonight. He just kind of gave me an update. Things aren't, this is not a good deal. Really a serious situation with her. So prayers out there for Jen. We love you. Everybody send your thoughts and prayers and love out to Jen. She said the next 24 hours would be really important for her and her mom. So we love you, Jen. Hopefully we get some good news come Sunday when Florida State goes back to practice. I hate to do that and then go straight into your let everybody know where to go. But yeah, Jen, she's been with me since November right here on the podcast. We've came all the way from like 500 subscribers to 2,500. We've done, I don't know, 150 shows together. We got to hang out at the spring game. We got to meet a lot of you guys out at the spring game. So you guys all know that she wants to be here talking football, and she's not here. It's something going on. So again, we love you, Jen. Hope mom gets better. Whatever the case may be, we're here for you and we love you. Again, we should be here Sunday. I'm not sure on the time. You can bet on 7 Eastern, 6 Central. But if something happens crazy, we may go live early. You never know. If it works out for everybody, better to do an early morning show. We'll do that. I'm not sure exactly what time practice has been. It has been being in the mornings. So hopefully we can get to talk to a few people that are going to be at practice and give you guys a really, really good scoop for the first all padded practice. And then boom, it'll be another week. Next thing you know, we'll have scrimmage and shit coming up. Probably next Saturday, we'll probably end up having a scrimmage.
The first scrimmage. Yeah. Possibly the first scrimmage will be next Saturday. Yeah, I could see that.
Anything on your mind before we get out of here, brother?
No, just want to send, like you said, send positive energy and love to Jen with her mom in the situation right now. And that's it.
All righty. And do let everybody know, though, where to go find your podcast at. I keep trying to do it, but I'll butcher the at if I try to do it.
That's all right. It's Double D's Let's Talk Ball podcast. It's on YouTube. You can also tap in with my partner, D's Corner, DSCORNER, D's Corner. We'll touch on NFL. We have not touched a lot on it yet, but camp started, so we're about to start revving it back up. We do have gaming also, so if we've done anything, it's been basically off of gaming. We're coming back to getting ready for the season with football and the NFL and the news that's going on there. So just continue to support, like, share, and subscribe. That subscribe button is free. Don't cost a thing. And we really appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Again, thank you guys. Make sure you guys go subscribe over there. Send our prayers out to Jen. Hit the subscribe button here. We'll see you guys Sunday. And shoot, let's just laugh at Dabo for a second as we head out.
What's up, guys? It's Braden Jacobs checking in at Clemson's official visit weekend with my best friend and head coach, Dabo Sweeney.
Hey, and I'm Coach Dabo Sweeney, Clemson football, hanging out with
Braden Jacobs.